There's a certain kind of man you almost never notice at first. He doesn't dominate the room. He doesn't post motivational quotes every morning. He doesn't announce his plans like a movie trailer. And yet, 5 years later, somehow he's built the life everyone else was talking about. A peaceful relationship, a stable mind, a respected career, financial freedom, a body that still looks strong at 40. Not because he got lucky, not because he was louder, but because he understood a psychological principle most people never learn. Real power grows quietly. I once knew a man named Adrian. In college, nobody considered him the successful one. He wasn't the funniest, wasn't the richest, didn't have the biggest personality. Meanwhile, everyone else around him constantly performed success. People talked about startups they never started, fitness goals they never committed to, dreams they repeated so often they confused talking with progress. Adrian was different. Every morning he disappeared for 2 hours. No announcement, no explanation. Years later, I learned what he'd been doing. Studying, training, building systems, learning skills nobody applauded in the beginning. And that's the first psychology of men who win quietly. They are process-oriented, not attention-oriented. Psychologists call this intrinsic motivation. It means your behavior is driven by internal satisfaction instead of external validation. Most people rely on dopamine from recognition, likes, praise, approval, attention. But quiet winners learn to extract dopamine from progress itself. That changes everything, because when attention disappears, they keep going. There's another trait you notice in these men. They rarely react emotionally in public, not because they don't feel emotion, but because they developed emotional regulation. And emotional regulation is one of the strongest predictors of long-term success. I remember sitting beside a friend after his business collapsed, completely collapsed, months of work gone. I expected panic, anger, excuses. Instead, he just looked at me and said, "Embarrassment fades faster than debt. I'll rebuild." That sentence stayed with me for years. Weak men see emotions as commands. Quiet winners see emotions as information. That distinction matters. A man who obeys every emotion becomes controlled by temporary states. He quits when motivation drops. He overspends when insecure. He lashes out when disrespected. But emotionally regulated men create distance between feeling and action. In psychology, this is called response inhibition, the ability to pause before reacting. And honestly, that single ability quietly changes entire lives. Because most destruction in a man's life happens impulsively. One angry message, one ego-driven decision, one reckless habit repeated for years. The men who win quietly understand something painful. Your life is usually shaped less by dramatic moments and more by repeated emotional patterns. There's also a loneliness to quiet success nobody talks about. When a man stops performing for approval, some people lose interest. You stop entertaining everyone, stop oversharing, stop chasing constant social proof, and suddenly people think you changed, but maybe you just became focused. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That sounds inspiring until you realize becoming yourself often disappoints people who benefited from your confusion. Quiet winners usually go through this phase, a period where they become less visible socially while becoming stronger privately. And psychologically, this reflects delayed gratification, the willingness to sacrifice immediate pleasure for future stability. The scary part is that delayed gratification looks boring from the outside. Nobody claps for consistency.
Nobody films the man waking up early for the 400th time. Nobody celebrates the guy calmly investing money instead of flexing it. But years later, everybody notices the outcome. That's the irony. The loudest men often optimize for visibility. The quiet ones optimize for durability. And durability always compounds. You can see it in relationships too. Men who win quietly don't desperately chase admiration. They create psychological safety, and psychological safety is deeply attractive. A calm nervous system changes the atmosphere around a person. People trust men who feel grounded, not perfect, grounded. One woman once described her husband to me in a way I never forgot. She said, "When life gets chaotic, he becomes calmer instead of louder." That is emotional maturity. Not dominance, not aggression, not pretending to be alpha, just stability. And stability is rare. The older I get, the more I notice that the strongest men often move quietly because they no longer need to convince anyone. In psychology, there's something called self-concept clarity. It means your identity becomes internally stable instead of externally negotiated. You stop asking, "Do people see my value?" and start asking, "Am I living in alignment with my values?" That shift is subtle but life-changing. Because insecure men perform constantly. Secure men conserve energy. And maybe that's the hidden psychology underneath all of this. Quiet winners are not passive. They are simply less addicted to performance. They don't confuse noise for progress. They don't mistake attention for respect. And they understand that real confidence usually looks calm. Not because life became easy, but because they became harder to shake. So if you feel invisible right now, if your growth feels unnoticed, if your discipline feels painfully ordinary, good. That's often what real transformation looks like in the beginning. Quiet, uncelebrated, almost boring. Until one day people call you lucky without realizing how long you practiced winning in silence.